am just like telling you everything right now for some reason. So I had gotten all my ducks in a row. I got the lighting right. I got the camera all set up. I even got a cute new backdrop. And it turns out I don't have the right size SD card for my Tascam to record audio. So I'm doing this. This worked last time I did it. You'll just have to hope next time I have the right size SD card floating around for your audio pleasure. But I would like to welcome everyone back to my channel. My name is Meghan Stark. I do content online. A lot of it is motorcycle related, but I like doing think piece, philosophical, adventure-y, fun stuff. And if you're new here, you should absolutely subscribe. But today I'm doing a Q&A because I recently passed 15K subscribers, and I'd like to mark the occasion with a little bit of a special. I've never done anything for any number milestone before, so mark the occasion, and thank you so much for joining me. It's so cool to have so many of you here, so many like-minded and different-minded and diverse people in the audience. Yep, happy to have you. So I'm going to get into some of these questions. I'll start with ones that I've gathered from YouTube, and then we'll go from there. So Ahmed Ali Ador, hopefully I said that remotely close, he said, any plan on buying a super sports motorcycle in the future just for fun or for a different experience? So I'm not really that partial to super sport bikes. I think they're cool, but I've just never really investigated them. And to be honest, in the past year, I've just not been looking at bikes. I mean, other than the Honda Rebel 1100, I haven't really kept up with bike news or looked at new bike specs or really paid any attention to that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't even know where I'd start if I even looked for a super sport bike, but I don't foresee it in my near future. But you know, things change, people change, and you never know. I think I'll pronounce this username Acaroni. Kind of sounds like macaroni. And he says, Megan, would you consider buying and customizing a used bike to be better than buying a new bike and paying what seems more for the customized options? And also, while on the custom convo, have you ever customized your coffee with a bit of whiskey? It's better than Miller any day. We need a whiskey that tastes like coffee. So yeah, let's start with the whiskey coffee one. I don't remember if I've done whiskey coffee before, but I've of course done coffee with a little bit of Bailey's. That's a match made in heaven. I have done a hot toddy, which is whiskey and tea. I think those go really well together, but I'm just going to go ahead and stop myself right here because I remember that I have had whiskey and coffee. Of course, I've had Irish coffees, and those are usually made with Jameson or Tullamore Dew. I think I've had Tullamore Dew in them more often than Jameson, and it's just been so long since I've had one. Apparently, if something hasn't happened to me in the last month, I don't remember it happened. So yes, I have had that, and they're delicious. And then when it comes to customizing a bike, honestly, I'm like the worst person to ask. Maybe not the worst person to ask, but not a great person to ask, because I just don't think I have enough experience in the customizing motorcycles realm, and especially when it comes to budgeting customizing motorcycles. I guess it depends on the market. If you pick up a used bike, I'm imagining that there's a little bit more custom parts available, especially if they've been doing a bike for a number of years. I mean, if you get a new bike, maybe you get one that's been in a series for a long time, and then there's a lot of parts out there. And I don't know if you're kind of looking for a more modular approach to customization, or you want to fabricate your own parts, and all of that is out of my wheelhouse. I did not do that much. I mean, I have a custom Ducati Scrambler Cafe Racer, but I can't say that it's groundbreaking by any means. I just swapped out some of the most offensive or the bits that I really wanted to be distinct on, and then I haven't really done much else. I need to do an updated walk around tour of the bike, not because I've really done anything in particular new, but just because I'd like to have a higher quality version of that video on my channel. So yeah, that's all I've got to say on customization. I hope I was helpful. Andy Black asked, what's the most interesting or strange thing you've seen while riding a motorcycle? And I knew when I screen capped this one that it's something that I should think long and hard about and come up with something great. And I feel like I remember the sensation of seeing something kind of crazy on the bike and being like, oh, I really wish I were recording during all that. But okay, this is going to be so specific. This is one thing I can remember. I was riding my motorcycle along Prospect, which is at the top of the bluff in Milwaukee, overlooking Lake Michigan. Sometimes you can see lake, most of the time you can't. from that perspective. And there's this local legend. This is a fun tidbit. There's a local legend around here called the Milwaukee. I'm sure if you look it up, it's basically this guy that really likes walking. And in the summertime, especially, he walks with his shirt off, and he like vaguely resembles a Wolverine, mostly because he has like crazy dark hair, and then he's like super muscular and hairy.
He's somebody that, most people have never met him, but they've seen him.
There's actually like Wolverine sightings, where people will post it online, like, here's a picture walking down the street.
He has that real manly walk.
Does not drive. I don't even think he has a bike.
He's just famous for walking around Milwaukee with his shirt off.
And so he's been affectionately referred to as a Milwaukee. I'd heard of him, but I hadn't seen him out in the wild. And I was so excited because I had just had my first Milwaukee sighting on the bike. And of course I wasn't recording. Although even if I were, I don't know how much it would be relevant to a global audience, but for the local cats, that would have been a very valuable sighting. So I think maybe that's a somewhat interesting thing I've seen on the bike. I know I've seen strange stuff, but gosh, I just can't think of it off the top of my head. Most of it is maybe like people interacting with me. I mean, I did talk about this story on my Patreon, but I recounted a story where I got yelled at and followed on a bike and like some of the miscellaneous harassment things that have happened, and I find those very strange. But other than that, I just can't think. I'm bad at like recounting my own personal experiences, so that's all we'll have to do for today. And if you do want to hear some in-depth knowledge on like strange happenings for me on the bike, I do have a video on my Patreon that includes some stories that I just don't really want to belabor online because it's like, who is this helping, I don't know how to say this. Bill Luigi by Bill Gui 100 says, what advice do you have for someone who wants to create a moto channel? What do you hope for your channel? So in terms of creating your own moto channel, I'd just say start testing things out now. Even if you don't have anything to say, even if you don't know where you're going with it, even if you can't even go on long rides right now in a moto vlog, just start testing things because everything can go wrong. I mean, look at me right now. Like, this is just a sit down video and stuff still went wrong. So I'd say just start testing things out, see where you'd like your camera position to be and how you want your audio set up and how you can best get clear audio, experiment with blocking the wind flow in certain areas and see where you can place the mic that will be best to get clear audio without too much wind, because that is one of the toughest variables. And I think once you get over, and that's the kind of stuff that can really like make you lose steam as you're working on things. Like even just now, I did all this stuff and all of a sudden I pulled out the task cam and I'm like, oh, no SD. And I was like, don't stop now, man. Like, don't lose steam. Don't let this just stop your whole process for the day. Just do it. See how you can figure out how to pivot. And I feel like motovlogging is just so much pivoting and troubleshooting, and the quicker you start doing that, the easier your life will be, and you'll maybe have some backup methods for solving problems, or you'll be able to see and anticipate certain problems. Like I have a mount that it's very easy to accidentally point it too low because it's a mount I can move around, and there've been a couple of videos of mine that have been like sideways or pointed a little too far down, and that can be a bit disheartening. So if you can figure out how to make nice systems for yourself, it's going to just take so much of the brain game out of motovlogging, and then you can just be present, be spontaneous, and do your thing. So that's my thorough advice. And then in terms of what I hope for my channel, I don't have any big long-term strategies with this. I just want to continue making things that interest me and are useful for other people, and that can go any direction that it works. I still have a very long catalog list of ideas and things I want to do with the channel. So once I run out of those, I'll readdress, but I just keep getting more ideas. So it's kind of tough. I think I'm more so take a break out of maybe general fatigue or life stuff more than I take a break out of not having enough ideas. And in the way that I've prioritized the channel thus far, I haven't burnt out out of making content in particular. So I think that's been great for me, is not thinking of it as an obligation at this point. You know, it is satisfying to remain consistent and maybe post every week, but it's not something that I feel wed to. So that is how I feel about my channel. It's still fun, it's still fresh, and I still have a lot of ideas, so I'm keeping it up. Brendan Walsh says, you've mentioned and passed the Royal Enfield dealership near you a few times now. Have you ever tried any of their motorcycles? If so, what you think? And it says, greetings from Ireland. So let me get into this. I'm going to put down the laptop for a minute. I don't know if you can even tell, but I have a laptop on my lap. So about Royal Enfield, I test rode a Continental GT before I ever rode a Ducati. That's not true. Is it true? I might have ridden one before. I think I rode a Ducati Monster before I rode the Continental GT. But point is, before I even test rode a Scrambler, I had ridden a yellow Continental GT. I think they were in the 350 size or 400 size. And I think now they're making 600s. I really should have double checked this before I did this video, but you don't come here for the stats. So I was heavily considering getting a Royal Enfield Continental GT for my first bike. And I was even trying to like put the money down on and all that, but the dealership wasn't ready to sell them at that point. There was something about how the headquarters can't own the dealership, and you know, it's just like Harley doesn't have dealerships of their own. They have dealers owned by other companies that sell their bikes. Same with all sorts of automobiles and different vehicles. So I think that's just like a law in the United States. I don't know if that's a global law, but car manufacturers and bike manufacturers can't themselves have dealerships that they own. Pretty much the Royal Enfield wasn't like up and running when I was in the market for a bike. And then the Scrambler Cafe Racer came out, and I thought to myself, wow, that is my gal. That's my bike. So I had test ridden a Flat Track Pro, and then I threw my dollars at the first Scrambler Cafe Racer that I could find. So I bought it new. Unideal, but this was a hot commodity and I had to get my hands on it. So I had bought that bike actually from Illinois and brought it up because at the time, all of the Scrambler Cafe Racers were spoken for in Milwaukee, and someone did back out, and then I could have bought it from Milwaukee. Long story, not interesting. I ended up still getting it from Illinois because I was just honoring that deal. So Royal Enfield, that's the real point of the story. I had test ridden the Continental GT, and then on the same little test ride, I switched with the ride leader, the ride guide, whatever the people do who do test rides. I switched with them, and they were on the Royal Enfield Classic. So I thought the GT was fun. This was so long ago now. I think it was 2016 when I test rode that bike. So if I can't remember stuff that happened to me, like, I just can't remember that. But I do remember it being hella vibrationally, but fun. And I think it was a little stiff, but, you know, it was one of those tester bikes that didn't have a ton of miles on it. And then with the Royal Enfield Classic, it was vibrating enough that the mirrors kept getting unscrewed and they were like flopping down. And I swear we needed like a wrench to tighten those down because I'd be tightening them down at every single stoplight. So that I could see out of the mirrors. And on the GT, there was enough vibration at certain times that you couldn't really see out of the mirrors. And it's just a bike that I think you have to gear up really high in order to maybe avoid some of that vibration. But I don't know, you tell me if you've got the finesse to operate the Royal Enfields just right. But those are the smaller displacements. And then in 2019, they unveiled the twins. They unveiled the Interceptor and the larger displacement of the Continental GT. And that was very exciting. And I went to that event. We can roll some of the footage now. But I went to that event and I rode some of the bikes and I had a great little time and I never ended up making a video about it. didn't know, I think I, didn't have my audio going in it, so I didn't have live commentary. And then just time passed and I never ended up writing any personal experience on it. So I'm having to harken back several years in my reflections of Royal Enfields. But I think the tough thing is nothing particularly wowed me about them. They're very good looking. They're great bikes, and I've had great experiences with the people associated with Royal Enfield. But myself, if I were looking for a bike in that price range, I'd probably go for a Japanese bike. And because when I was buying my bike, I was willing to spend a little more, and the Italian heritage aspect of Ducati was very appealing to me. My brother rides Ducati. My uncle used to ride Ducati. And just kind of like Japanese bikes and Italian bikes have been around me quite a lot. And I ended up going that route instead. So I do like Royal Enfields, and I think the twins are a really great extra step, but I still much prefer my Scrambler Cafe Racer. I know it's not really a comparison you can necessarily make, but I love my 803 Scrambler, and I don't know. I know Royal Enfield is a relatively new presence in the United States, so I'd like to see how things go, but I can't see myself necessarily owning one, but I think they're great for a lot of people. So that's that on that. So that's not all of the solid questions from YouTube, but I can already feel how long this is getting. So I want to get into some of the Instagram questions, and then we'll see what else we can get into maybe at a later date or perhaps during a live stream. I don't know. And if you want to participate in this next time, and I think Instagram is just a little bit more of a casual freeform platform in general, and I like using it more often than I'd use like YouTube stories or community posts, but follow me there at Stark Naked, and also follow my company account, Great Lakes Supply Co., which this shirt happens to be from. And that's actually where this photo is from. It's a self-portrait of mine that I took several years ago. I think this one was a 2019, or no, this was a 2018 portrait, I think. And yeah, I posted that on Instagram a while back, and I've been doing a lot of self-portrait motorcycle photography for many moons now, and I plan to continue doing that. Not all of it is posted online, but we'll see what kind of work I could make out of this catalog in the future. But let's get into our first Instagram question. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to read the question necessarily at the same time as the username, so sorry in advance, but hopefully I can put you up on the screen. But one question is, do you ever want to make non-motorcycle content? I'd love to see a video about your daily clothes. And honestly, this question speaks to me on a fundamental level because I love clothes. I specifically like, vintage and kind of more curated and intentional fashion and style, not necessarily what's trending, but what's iconic. And I spend a lot of time looking at archives of different upscale designers and perusing the real for really good vintage finds and secondhand clothing. I would like to start including more clothing related content on my channel. It will be a soft sell. I don't foresee this ever changing into a personal style or fashion channel, but that aspect of things is something I'd really like to incorporate, because when I see my future and how I'd like my interests to converge, I think it would be very cool to collaborate more in the fashion world. So in order to set that intention, I think some of what I do online has to encompass some of that. So long story short, I'll probably, I do have something in the pipeline. I don't want to give it away too soon, but I have something that fits perfectly at the intersection of motorcycles and clothing. I'm sure I can finesse more and more interesting ways to incorporate these passions together. Next prompt is best concert you've ever been to, and what's a dream band that you'd want to see live? And I take this question so seriously, and I feel like I'm going to evade it just like I evaded the other questions that I take too seriously about most interesting or most this or most that. I know I'm always going to forget some band that I love or some concept or something about my passion that I'll misrepresent it online. I don't know if you guys ever have this paranoia, like I'd never make like a top 10 list because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't immortalize that. Like, what if I find one of the greatest bands of all time next week? Like, what's going to happen? Best concert ever would be very difficult to pin down. I have had more recently, I had like a spiritual experience seeing Borns live, which I was not expecting. I've seen Stone Temple Pilots live, I want to say 3 times. Maybe it was just 2 times, but I think I've seen them live 3 times. I'm not even getting into best of the best now that I think about it. What's one of my favorite concerts ever? I feel like I've transcended to a different plane on certain concerts. And which ones were those? For me, a lot of music is experiential more than it is just like a technically excellent concert where maybe the sound quality was amazing. But I really loved seeing Glass Animals live years ago because I went to the concert by myself. I didn't buy a ticket with anybody else. And I ended up running into my cousin and her husband there. And it was so fun. And obviously the performance was excellent. So I'm going to call that a best in recent memory because it was just all around top to bottom great. And I hope that people will be touring again and I can see bands like Glass Animals. All right, I'm editing this video right now and I just thought of a nice, tidy best concert. It hits all those nodes of nostalgia, experience, and an excellent concert. Picture this. It's the summer of 2011. You just graduated from high school. You're top of your game. You don't have braces or nothing. And you see that Summerfest has announced their lineup. And in the amphitheater is Cage the Elephant, Florence and the Machine, and the Black Keys during Brothers era, all playing in the same lineup. This is one ticket, people. I booked that ticket with my dad and we saw that concert together, and I think that will probably be very difficult to top, even though I've seen other splendid concerts. Just the experience of being freshly graduated from high school. The world is my oyster. I'm going to Europe in a few months and I'm just having the time of my life with my dad at this just excellent show with this flawless lineup. So that'll be my guy. I'm going to say 2011, Cage the Elephant, Florence and the Machine, and the Black Keys. And it was so, so lovely. And on the want to see list, I would kill to see this band, the Alalas, or just maybe Alalas. I don't know. I don't remember how they do it, but I got really into them last year and I've just continued to constantly listen to them. And I think that I think they'd just be an excellent band to see live. There's something really mesmerizing about the way they do music. I even describe it sometimes as like they're almost playing in the other room because the way they mix their tracks, it's not mixed like pop music where the vocals are really prominent. And something about that is just so excellent to me. I'd also love to see Bon Iver. I can't believe that I've never seen Bon Iver before. There have been opportunities, but I didn't get into his whole catalog until more recently when I wanted a slower pace to some of the music I listened to. And then I'm like, oh, I know the guy. So I've been listening to a lot of Bon Iver in the past year and this year, getting deeper into his catalogs. I tend to see bands after I've fallen in love with several albums so that I know that I'll have a good time the whole time. Most concerts that I go to are for bands that I've almost just memorized all their work and I want to see it all live. This is important to me and I'm going to interrupt again. So all these things I was talking about was mainly thinking about big bands, like concerts of bands you've probably heard of. And because we've been in quarantine so long, I don't even remember what it feels like to go to a show. But really, in the past few years, I've been going to way more local shows than I've been going to big shows. I mean, going to big shows all the time is expensive. And especially if someone you were banking on falling into obscurity starts getting a resurgence of Gen Z and then is suddenly selling out amphitheaters. I'm looking at you, Panic at the Disco. I really thought that you would fall into obscurity and I could just keep listening to the hits. But now they keep making more albums that really pop off for the youth. Not necessarily sure if I like everything they've been doing lately. I've kind of fallen off a little bit. But anywho, I've probably seen Panic at the Disco more times than any other band at this point, except for local bands. I see a lot of local music whenever I get the chance to, and we are hurting for that in the pandemic. So when I say this stuff about memorizing catalogs, it's usually for those big bands. It's like if I'm shelling out $70 for a ticket, I'm going to love your catalog. And people don't usually drag me to shows. Maybe I need more friends. But honestly, another unironic fave of mine, aside from Panic at the Disco, that hits a bit of a nostalgic node, but they are excellent as a band and Brendan Urie as vocalist, but Harry Styles, I never knew that I would get into him because I never was on that One Direction bandwagon, but he's so rock and roll. He's awesome. If you like Rolling Stones and stuff like Pink Floyd and a little bit of jam band, not crazy jam band, but a little bit, I definitely that Rolling Stones node, but modern and just wonderful. Harry Styles, check him out. Have you heard of him? Otherwise, this is kind of a cop-out, but in terms of dream bands to see live, The Doors would be up there, and Pink Floyd and all these like iconic bands in their original lineup would absolutely rock my world. Seeing Nirvana, seeing Soundgarden, like there's a lot of bands that are no more or are missing key members that would just be so legendary to see that I didn't get a chance to see. Someone asked what bike would make your Ducati Scrambler go away, and I can't believe you'd even ask me that because I just can't imagine my life without it. I would only ever add to the stable, and right now I don't really have a stable of my own for my horses. I rent space, but another bike I could see in my life, she would never take the place of Storm, my Ducati Scrambler, but obviously that Honda Rebel 1100, I was so excited when it was finally released, and they have that burgundy color. I don't remember what they call it, something like Bordeaux. Oh my gosh, I love that one. I would absolutely add that to my arsenal if money and space and time and resources and better investing strategies were of no object. Then I would absolutely add that to my lineup. It'd be gorgeous. AJ Claraval says, do you have a Spotify? Would love to listen to your playlist. Love your video song choices. And this is another one of those prompts that absolutely speaks to my heart because I love music. I'm always going to pick these music questions if you want to hack your way into these Q&As. A lot of my personal style comes from music, and a lot of my experience of the world comes from music. So on the topic of Spotify, yes, I have one, and I would be willing to divulge some playlists. And I've made some playlists that include, well, one thing I want to do is I want to make a playlist of the music in my video. So if you ever liked a song in my video, I could just smash them all out on a playlist and you could listen through. And if there's something that you had noticed that you liked, this would be a bit of a time-consuming process, but since I typically link things up in the description of the videos, it wouldn't be an obscene task to make a video playlist. But otherwise, I absolutely have some of my own fun playlists that I've made over the years, and I haven't really delved too deep into playlist making, but I have some fun stuff. So I don't know if I have to like link up my Spotify or how that works. I've never really shared my account as an account, so perhaps it will be down in the description, but you can check out what I have to offer. I definitely have some playlists I can call out at least that I know are like curated and good and delicious. Truly, my dream job, if I want to see how my life will pivot, would be to, dabble in a little bit of interior design, fraternize with people in the fashion industry, and be a radio DJ. Don't be surprised if I'm coming at you with some crazy stuff later that has nothing to do with motorcycles, because I think motorcycling, I don't even know where I was going with this tirade, but this honestly seems like a great place to stop. Now that I've put out my intentions for being a moto fashion radio DJ, if I really had like a dream job growing up, it was radio DJ or journalist for Rolling Stone magazine. And, Rolling Stone doesn't necessarily have the same clout that it used to, but journalism in that capacity, I still think manifests in my life. And especially when it comes to making these videos, I think that's like kind of the next step, that writing and creativity has found a way into what I make, because I make and do a lot of things throughout the day. It's cool how I can segment some of the things I'm really passionate about into video making and save some of the more technical stuff for the clients and things that don't get shared with the world. So I know I feel very balanced lately and I am just like telling you everything right now for some reason. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, like I said in the beginning, subscribe to the channel. Follow me on all my little platforms, and go check out my website, Great Lakes Supply Co. That's where you'll see this shirt amongst many other very groovy designs. I have a background in graphic design, and I made all these really cool graphics that are inspired by motorcycles and visibility. And even behind me in my backdrop, you can see some of my sketches of the most recent collection I put together, which is the Seen and Heard collection. It's inspired by Zen and visibility. But I want to thank you one more time for 15K subscribers. Thank you so much for watching, liking, sharing, and commenting. And until next time, ride safe.